Welcome back to Bikes with Ben. Why am I standing here underneath my very precariously placed mountain bike? Well, it's because today we are adding the final component into our Shimano Best Bang for Your Buck drivetrain series. Which component is that? Well, it's actually a couple of them. But in general, we're talking cranksets. Which one's gonna be best for you and what's gonna give you the most performance for the price? All that in a minute as soon as I get this camera into place. Stay tuned. Yeah, that looks good. Even better. Okay, before I get too far into cranksets, let me cover Shimano components in general. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that Shimano lets you mix and match all of their mountain bike drivetrain components across the series. What series do they have? Well, there's 4, starting with Deore at the lower end, SLX, XT, and XTR. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll also know that XTR isn't always the best bang for your buck. Rarely is it the best bang for your buck. That is their racing lineup. It's gonna save weight while trying to maintain functionality. Typically your Deore, SLX, and XT are your kind of middle range best options. My next video is going to cover all the stuff that I've recommended. This video on cranksets is the last one in the drivetrain series, so stay tuned, subscribe if you want, don't miss that video. That's gonna cover all of them. It's gonna tell you what prices you're gonna save, what weights you're gonna save, what functionalities you're gonna gain by picking and choosing everything you can to make the best drivetrain from Shimano. So this video is all about cranksets. Let's go over a few terminologies that you're probably gonna wanna know because I didn't know any of them when I was looking up these statistics or these specifications. We're gonna start with spacing. Well, spacing is your rear wheel spacing. Do you have a non-boost, a boost, or a super boost rear wheel? This one right here is a boost. Boost is kind of standard nowadays in the mountain bike industry. Fat bikes kind of have the super boost typically, and then older bikes will have the non-boost setup. What is your chain line? Well, chain line is the measurement from the center of your frame to the center of your chain. On this, it's kind of in that middle boost range, but across Shimano's lines for these cranksets, you have the X100 series, so 9100, 8100, 7100, 6100s. The 100s are going to be your non-boost, but can work on boost spacing as well. The 120s are going to be your boost spacing, and the 130s typically are your super boost spacing. So before you buy anything, you need to know some of those terms, figure out what frame you have. The other things that you can add or you can modify, order in different configurations for these are crank arm lengths. Typical seems to be 175 millimeter from what I can find. This is like a frame size though. You're gonna wanna pick this based on your size. Mine are probably too long for me. I'm not a huge guy, and 175 is probably too long. You get better leverage with a long crank arm, but you're gonna lose, or you're gonna pedal strike more often. In my case, I should probably be running a 165 or a 170 millimeter, and those are the 2 other options. Finally, your chain ring. You get to pick a chain ring and bolt it right onto here. The default seems to be 32 tooth, but you can go on some of the lines 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, or 38 teeth. Every comparison today is going to be compared using a 175 millimeter crank arm and a 32 tooth chain ring. That's just going to be for consistency. When you go to buy one of these, make sure it's going to fit your frame. Make sure you're gonna get the chain ring that you want and make sure the crank arm lengths are what you want as well. Whew, that was a long-winded explanation of all of that, but I think it was important to know. Let's get this bike cleared out of the way. We'll get this wall clear and we'll move you into my intro and onto the deep dive detailed specs on Shimano's crankset comparisons. Stay tuned. I hope this isn't a long one. I'm sorry. All right, we'll do our best to make this part quick. Let's throw them up here. Deore, SLX, XT, and XTR. Your Deore is gonna come in at 782 grams and cost you only $72. Now, the Deore can be bought with the chainring already installed. So that $72 is your all-in price for the crank arms and the 32 tooth chainring in this example. The other models, SLX, XT, and XTR, require you to buy the chainring separately. So if you go to the SLX, it's gonna come in at 631 grams and all in gonna cost you $116. The XT is going to come in at 620 grams and cost you $204. Finally, the XTR, 531 grams. It is significantly lighter. It is 250 grams lighter than the Deore. it's gonna cost you $549. So there's that one for you. $435 of those dollars is on the crank arms themselves, non-chainring parts, basically, the two crank arms and the center line there. The chainring itself is gonna cost you $114. So each of these series have different chain rings that go with them. They are a lot of the times similar tooths or same number of teeth, but they are not the same chain rings across. I believe the XTR, it does not have the center body. The Deore does, but it comes already installed. And the SLX and the XTR have the spider arm, the aluminum spider arm, with a chain ring that bolts to that, so you can easily swap chain rings out without having to change the entire piece. Now, I'm not covering all of that much because you can also go out and buy third-party oval chain rings, third-party lighter machined chain rings. There's all kinds of stuff you can go out and make these a little different for what your needs are. We're just trying to compare Shimano's full lineup here. So let's get next into Q factor. Something I should have covered at the beginning. What is Q factor? Well, it's the distance between the outside of your left crank arm and the outside of your right crank arm. It's basically where your pedals are going to install to. The Deore, SLX, and XT all have 172 millimeter Q factor, and the XTR has 162 millimeter. It's not going to change too much for you. Your feet are going to be down there. I wouldn't worry about it. All of these, except for the XTR, have steel teeth on their outer chainring. The middle body, the spider body there, those are either glass reinforced plastic or carbon reinforced plastic. On the XTRs, those are aluminum. What did I miss? Well, that's about it. There's not much to these components. The XTR is obviously way too expensive. The XT is $204, and it doesn't really give you anything but an 11 gram weight savings over the SLX. The Deore and SLX are really our two deciding factors here. Why would you go one over the other? Well, you're gonna save 150 grams. That's not nothing. And that's about all you're getting. I mean, the SLX might look a little cooler, but for $72, I think the Deore is gonna be your best bang for the buck. Crank arms are kind of a weird one. It's not as easy to say, yes, this one's the best, this one's great, because there are so many different things you can buy. Going out and buying a pure Shimano crankset, there's no problem with it, but there are so many third-party chain rings you can add, so many different widths and lengths and everything you can get, that it's not going to make a difference like the shifter would. Now, I'm not saying your crank arm length isn't going to make a difference, but buying specifically the Shimano version of all this isn't going to make a huge difference. So, sorry this video is a little harebrained, a little spaced out. I don't know much to say about it. The Deore is fine. Deore is what I run. The SLX, it adds what, $40 over the Deore, saves you 150 grams. I don't know what you get for that. 150 grams of weight savings is what you get for that, I guess. The difference there, I think, is that the body on the Deore is a GFRP glass, just like the SLX. The body on the XT is carbon. The body on the XTR, well, there isn't a body because it's one solid chainring. I don't really know the difference between the Deore and the SLX that adds all that weight. It might be the crank arm material. I really don't know. This is a very harebrained, very spaced out one, like I said. But if I had to say, get the Deore. The Deore is $72. It's not going to steer you wrong. SLX $116. It's not going to steer you wrong either. So Deore or SLX, I'm going to give my actual stamp to the Deore, but there's nothing to be upset about if you get either of those two. Don't buy the XT. I don't see why it would be worth it for that extra double the price of the SLX to save you 13 grams, 11 grams. Don't buy the XTR. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, because you're going to want to see the next video. It won't be this harebrained. It won't be this spaced out. It'll actually be good, probably. All of the videos that I've done previously, the shifters, shifters, cassettes, chains, and derailleurs, and now cranksets, will be combined into our ultimate bang for your buck Shimano drivetrain. We will see comparisons of what would the cheapest total drivetrain be, the most expensive drivetrain, the lightest drivetrain, and then finally the best bang for your buck drivetrain. How much money can we save with how much weight are we sacrificing or features are we sacrificing? We'll do all of that comparison in a big, nice conglomeration of video next time. Please stay tuned. Please don't let this video influence your decisions on whether or not your content, my content, is good for you, because this is a rough one. Thanks, guys. Have fun out there riding. I can't post this. What am I doing? Huh? Maybe we will. See ya.